Hey everybody, Brian Zane here, and welcome to my review of AEW Dynamite for April 7th. It's the latest installment in WrestleMania Week 2021, The Grind. Because this week's NXT is actually a two-night takeover event, it does not seem fair or logical to compare night one of Stand and Deliver to this regular old AEW card. So Dynamite gets its own standalone debut tonight, and then tomorrow night I'll be reviewing nights 1 and 2 combined of NXT TakeOver. With that out of the way, let's begin. But as always, like what you like, don't be a dick. Our first visual on Dynamite tonight is, the Inner Circle looking so cool and badass in their rad rides, man. And then our first match sees Hangman Page taking on Max Caster of the Acclaimed, the #1 spot in the singles rankings on the line here. Caster with some happy feet early on, but he eventually slows down in that kind of good way and making it flow a bit better. Anthony Bowens on the outside distracting Page, and that allows Caster to get the advantage. Some good back and forth here. At one point, Page has the Deadeye set up, and then Bowens tosses the boombox into the ring, and when that distraction happens, then the referee moves the boombox. There's a chain slide in, hits Page with the chain, but Hangman's able to kick out, and then ultimately he hits the moonsault onto Bowens on the outside, hits the buckshot onto Caster on the inside to win the match. I thought it was a pretty strong opener here. Page getting back on the right track, so to speak here, looking still strong, top of the rankings. But I mean, what happened to his alliance with the Dark Order? We don't see him hanging out with the Dark Order at all this week. Tony Schiavone in the ring to welcome the Death Triangle for a promo, presumably. They talk about how they're going to be fighting the Young Bucks for the tag titles next week by virtue of winning the Casino Battle Royal at Revolution. Before they can say anything though, Orange Cassidy and the Best Friends and Chris Statlander show up, and Orange brings up footage that shows like the conflict that he had with Pac at last year's Revolution and all the battles between these two teams from last year. But Pac basically says, you want a shot at the future tag team champions? You want a piece of us right now? And Trent basically says, we're just here with a statement. The boys are back in town. Oh yeah, we have an alien helping us out now, so that's cool. And then that was pretty much it. That was something. It was one of the first of many moments on this night. And I've talked about this kind of trope before where the promos get cut off like right away for something. This episode had more of the same here, where it's like, here's a promo, but it's actually a setup to some huge redirect. Has nothing to do with the original reason these guys are out here for the promo. First of many tonight. The Inner Circle's back, and they're full-blown baby faces now. The language in Chris Jericho's promo made that pretty clear here tonight, basically saying we want to earn the good graces of the fans again. We want your help to help us, be the best faction in AEW and whatnot. Jericho admitting what happened at the hands of the Pinnacle last month was a wake-up call. He refers to MJF as my jerk-off friend. He says he wasn't trying to take MJF under his wing, but rather keep him under his thumb. And he admits that, he and the Pinnacle did outsmart them last month. He has this great line where he talks about MJF's Burberry scarves and, I was wearing scarves 5 years ago. Why try to steal my shit, man? He gets a bit inside baseball here when he talks about the term mark and how MJF always runs to the back after his segments to see what the internet thinks of him. He says, you're not a mark for yourself, you're a max for yourself. I thought that was kind of an interesting spin on that. He runs down all the other Pinnacle members one by one, calling Tully Blanchard a third-string Horseman member. He can't tell Dax and Cash apart. Are you Axe and Smash? Are you Dax and Cash? What are you? And then he ultimately makes the challenge for Blood and Guts against the Pinnacle. The match that we were all deprived of last year between the Inner Circle and the Elite got canceled because of the pandemic, and now we're getting it here. I thought it was a great babyface promo by Jericho. He really brought the fire here, very intense by the end, and kind of refreshing to hear him cut a babyface promo again for the first time in a long time. And the announcement of, Blood and Guts, the impending arrival of that, very excited for that. Christian Cage is being interviewed backstage. He talks about his in-ring return last week and puts over his opponent Kazarian pretty big here. Then Taz walks in and offers Christian a spot in Team Taz, tells him to think about it though. So will Christian accept? Probably not, but let's wait and see how this plays out. In what Excalibur refers to as a corporate synergy match to tie in with Godzilla vs. Kong, you've got Jurassic Express taking on Bear Country in a grudge match. Luchasaurus early on, well, first of all, Bear boulders got Jungle Boy in kind of a powerbomb position, and Luchasaurus tries to dive onto him with a crossbody, and he just kind of hits him and falls off. I don't know if that was meant to be something else or if it was a botch, but commentary covered it pretty well there. Jungle Boy's worked over a lot in this thing. For a match that's billed as, Titans, 3 out of the 4 at least are big guys. Jungle Boy, not so much. But the big little interactions we get with Jungle Boy and Bronson and Boulder were pretty good here. Some big pinfall breakups here as well, like Jungle Boy dives at the top rope at one point, and then he gets slammed onto Luchasaurus later on to break up the pin. There's a double cannonball spot in the corner by Bear Country, which I've never actually seen done before. That was pretty cool. But Luchasaurus recovers, hits his moonsault to win the match for his team. I really enjoy this thing. You know, corporate synergy, as shallow as that is, it led to a good match here. And for a team that I'm not that familiar with in Bear Country, I think this was a really good display for them to show what they could do against a very popular team. So yeah, no real complaints here. We get a promo from QT Marshall in the Nightmare Factory, and he's flanked by his guys. There's a Go-Go and Aaron Solo and Camarado. A lot of O sounds in all those names put together. Anyway, QT basically attacks Cody and talks about how Cody couldn't amount to anything in WWE, so he went to the Indies and surrounded himself with vanilla midgets to make him look like the star he always wanted to be. And now QT's been on the back burner all this time. How he was doing just fine, but now he's kind of like portrayed as some kind of charity case by Cody. He says he's surrounded himself with men who are tired of waiting in the shadows and ready to make a name for themselves. He puts each of them over, and then Anthony Ogogo talks for a bit, and he talks about shitty America. And then at the end, Camarado grabs a big bucket of paint and throws it against the wall where the Nightmare Factory logo is painted on. Ooh, the scandal. I thought this was a solid piece to further explain the motivations of QT Marshall here in his big turn last week. I know there's still fans out there who question the validity of a stable led by, QT Marshall of all people. Like, what's he ever done? I think the formation of this stable is way less about QT, and it's definitely more on the focus of the three young guys he is with, because, you know, every once in a while you see like a stable of rookies come together or a stable of young newcomers come together. It doesn't always often work out, and who's to say this is going to either, but I like the idea of like this one veteran taking these other guys under his wing and kind of having his own kind of henchmen. I mean, this is a great launch pad for all three of these relative unknowns. I think that's the real takeaway with this group, as I've seen it called Nightmare Factory Wolfpack. Tony Schiavone intros this next segment by saying it never gets old, doesn't it though? Because it's time for the icon Sting to make his way to the stage one more time for a promo that's inevitably cut off. And sure enough, even Jake Roberts is sick of this, because he comes out there and says, you know how this goes. You start out, we interrupt, you do nothing. He's tired of the trope now. Finally, Lance Archer shows up, and he is tired of the agenda in AEW saying that he should be the one in the main event. He should be the one getting this promo time, not the Stinger. And Sting yoinks the mic out of his hands and says, I agree with you. Not like, I agree in the Jeff Hardy match. Like, I agree. You should be in the main event. You should be the one doing this. You should be challenging for championships. And Jake Roberts should help you get there. Come on, Jake. He's got, the tools. You got to help him get there. And then Sting walks away after the pep talk, and then Archer looks to be conflicted and kind of frustrated at what Sting's words were, thinking maybe Sting was right about that. And so that's how that ends. As this is happening, by the way, we see all these shots of Scorpio Sky and Ethan Page sitting up in the rafters watching this, and they're the only ones we see here in the crowd cutaways. So I'm like, are they planting the seeds for like Page and Scorpio to fight Sting and Darby, or are we just trying to give more exposure to this new tag team? We get a Team Taz promo, but before Taz can say too much, Ricky Starks interrupts and once again wants to start something and instigate something with Brian Cage, but Taz sees this coming and puts a stop to that, tells not to instigate things. We have to show a unified front because we've invited Christian Cage to join the group. We got to show him we do the donuts on Fridays, and we're all a very happy family here, Team Taz. And by the way, there's no way that Brian Cage is definitely leaving the group soon. And even if Christian Cage joins, that's fine, because you can't have two guys with the same last name who aren't related in one group. TNT title match up next as Darby Allin defends against JD Drake, who is flanked by Cesar Bononi and Ryan Nemeth early on. Nemeth tries to distract Darby, and Sting clocks Bononi with the bat and chases Nemeth out of the arena. This is a great match here. Drake gets a lot of time to shine. This is his Dynamite debut, and he looks great here, and Darby is the perfect foil for him as he just sells his ass off for this big man stuff that JD is doing here. But Darby is very resilient. He kicks out of all the big things, hits a Avalanche Code Red and a coffin drop to win the match and retain. So JD looks very strong here in defeat, really pushes Darby to the edge, but Darby again shows his toughness and shows his ability to come through in the clutch. But then after the match, Darby gets jumped from behind by the Butcher and the Blade, and the rest of the Hardy family office kind of surround him. Sting returns with the Dark Order in tow, and they chase off the baddies. We get this kind of fracas with TAY CONTI, the Dark Order, and the Bunny on stage. That's a bit of a preview of the match they'll be having in a bit from this match. But first, we see Alex Marvez interviewing Chris Jericho, and even Jericho's treating Marvez nicely now. That's how you know he's a babyface. But again, Jericho gets maybe a couple of words in before he's jumped by MJF. The rest of Pinnacle chase him out to the ring. They start beating him down. The Inner Circle is locked in their dressing room. You see them trying to break through the door to get out. And then finally, Mike Tyson. Yes, the man, the guest of honor who they've been plugging all night. He shows up and he helps clean house. He just puts a whole bunch of body shots on poor Shawn Spears. And then the rest of the Inner Circle come out to finish making the save. We get the stare down with Jericho and Tyson, and they shake hands. Boy, things have come full circle, haven't they? Because last time Tyson was on AEW, we had that absolutely dog shit shove off, a big brawl, pull apart they had with the two of them, leading to something, who knows what, and then nothing happened, and now we've got the resolution. They're friends now because Jericho's a babyface. He's seen the light and everything. And we find out that next week Tyson's going to be the guest enforcer in a match between Jericho and Dax Harwood. So, gee, you think he's going to be involved? Again, no idea why Tyson's involved here, like in at all at AEW. Don't know why he was there last time. Don't know why he's there this time, but shit, at least he's still in good shape. Britt Baker's interviewed backstage, and she says she wants a shot at the Women's Championship, but Tony Schiavone points out that she's only ranked 4th. Then Britt says the quiet part loud when she says the ranking system is bullshit. She gets bleeped out when she says that, which is weird because you hear people say shit on the live mic all the time and it never gets bleeped out. So anyway, she says the ranking should be based not on wins and losses, but on star power and demographics, which she says she's at the top of. So she's going to play along and rack up some more wins and pretend the wins actually matter. I'm like, is that the best message to send when the ranking system in AEW has been attacked thoroughly pretty much since its inception? In a follow-up to the scuffle from earlier, you have TAY CONTI versus the Bunny. Conti is accompanied not just by some members of the Dark Order, but also by the women's champion, Hikaru Shida, which they really barely mention until the end. Some great back and forth in this matchup here. I really love the selling by Conti and the facial expressions by the Bunny here as she's working over Ty. Bunny kicks out of the Ty KO. There's a scrap on the outside with the Hardy family office and the Dark Order. Shida gets involved and she actually prevents Conti from using her own kendo stick against Ty, or the Bunny I should say, from using the kendo stick against Ty. Ty hits the DD Ty. It's got a lot of her name's in all of her moves here, and so it's kind of confusing to say. But she ends up planting Bunny with the DDT to win the match. So yeah, I think this is a good match. And again, Conti looking great here in AEW. Kind of one of the real success stories, I'd say, especially with the women's division. Easily one of the top ladies in the division right now. We get a promo from Red Velvet on Jade Cargill where she says Jade barely got the job done when she beat her in that tag team match last month with Shaq and Cody, so she better get the job done this time when they face off next week. I'm just glad that at least they didn't have her do anything this week that just made it really obvious she's just kind of a stand-in for Brandy, like a lot of the things she's been in for the last month and a half has been. In our main event, it's a long-awaited trios match where the Elite supposedly implodes as Kenny Omega and the Good Brothers take on Jon Moxley and the Young Bucks here. Don Callis joins commentary, and he's got some lines where he says Omega is better than Gotch and Hackenschmidt and all those other legends and everything. And during the commercial break in picture-in-picture, you hear Don say, well, society would be much better off if Jon Moxley weren't around. And JR finally has enough to scold him. Listen to yourself, Don, stop that. We get some moments where Omega is begging off from the Young Bucks, but they can't really follow through on what they want to do. Matt wants to super kick him, but he can't. All he settles for is some punches. And then they go for the BTE trigger, but they can't bring themselves to do it. And Moxley finally has enough. He tags himself in, hits 2 paradigm shifts, goes for a third, but the Bucks hit him with a double super kick, and that allows Omega to be dragged on top of Moxley's lifeless body, and he's pinned. And the Young Bucks seemingly, they've sold their souls, by God, to the devil himself in Omega and Don Callis. They hug and they shake hands, and what a swerve, what a twist we finally get here. It's like I've been waiting for weeks for some kind of development, some kind of forward progress in this storyline, and we finally get it, and it's very intriguing. I think this is kind of like extending what seems to be an inevitable blow-off at some point, where the Bucks may finally learn the truth of Omega's evil ways or something and fight back, or maybe they won't. I don't know, but they're kind of embracing the dark side here, and it's nice. It's nice that they're finally kind of committing right now to the heel thing with the Bucks after all that waffling they did like late last year, early this year. So I'm really interested in seeing where they go with this, like seeing seeing the Bucks and their emotion. Like at first it was so frustrating, and then when you see the payoff, it's like, oh man, like there's kind of some washes over you. It's like finally some resolution and some momentum. Let's get it. My grade for this week's AEW is a B-. I think that it was a pretty strong show all told. I mean, it's not going to compare to NXT. I haven't watched that stuff yet, but everything I've heard and seen about it and been spoiled about from night one sounds like it's an amazing show, and I cannot wait to review that tomorrow. But I think that AEW as a standalone by itself was a pretty solid show. I really enjoyed Jericho's babyface promo. It was a great speech, and the more I think about it and the more I process it, the more I am behind this betrayal by the Young Bucks and this turning and joining the dark side and everything. The real nitpick I have with this show, and it's just something I just noticed a lot tonight, it just happens a lot, I'll keep bringing it up, just so many points where like we have a promo in the ring, but it's actually like a red herring. Here's the real thing we should be focusing on in this promo, and it's fine to do that. Like, I don't have a problem with that in theory, but when literally every promo segment you do has that going on, it just becomes this real, just easy to identify trope, and I think it needs to be slowed down. You can tell stories without pulling that card multiple times in a single show. But what did you think of AEW this week, folks? Let me know in the comment section below. And I'm not doing this whole standalone thing for very long, because next week, once NXT and AEW move to separate nights, it's going to be the return of Who Wore It Better, where Wednesday night I will film the review of NXT and AEW back to back, yada yada. And so it's basically Wednesday Warfare, but a different layout, and it's under a different name, which is an old name. But you know what? People like nostalgia, so there we go. I'm Brian Zane, and I'll see you next time.